Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I have a very special guest to introduce you to, but first, I have a question I want to ask you. Have you ever wondered why you keep repeating the same patterns, even when you know they no longer serve you? Today, I'm really happy to be joined by our guest, Renee Masse. She is a transformational coach who helps people uncover the hidden parts of themselves, heal old wounds, and reconnect with their authentic self. Who wouldn't want to meet our guest today? Renee, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Cassandra. I'm really excited to be here.
And I'm excited to ask you some questions because who doesn't want to be reconnected with their authentic self? And most people don't even know what that means. When you say that, explain to the listeners what you are talking about.
Well, I feel that we are shaped by our environment, in our upbringing, and the cues that we receive from the people in our environment. And so, based on those experiences, you are being molded, you're being judged, and then you choose things in your life, sometimes based on what you desire, sometimes based on what other people desire. Have you ever wanted to choose something that was very different than what you believed that your parents actually wanted for you? And this was such a big part of my own journey because as a psychic medium, healer, astrologer, I can tell you right now, this is not what my parents wanted for me. And it was very hard for me to choose myself over choosing what I felt would that I would receive their approval. I wanted to receive the approval. And I think that we are in a society that is very much based in judgment, punishment, approval, permission. And so as children, we've grown up to be adults who are not really sure what is true for us or what is true for someone else. Where do I begin and end? And that's where we start really digging into what's authentic. Who am I when nobody else is watching?
That's interesting because sometimes later in life, we stop and go, why am I doing this? Because I want to do this. Most of the time it's with a hobby. So somebody's doing a hobby and they just push it over here as a hobby because you can't make a living at it. I mean, you're not supposed to make a living at this, but that hobby, that interest could be giving you a hint about who you really are, what you're supposed to be doing, because that's something you enjoy. And we've been conditioned to think that there's no way, if you enjoy it, that you're going to make a living at it. And it's like you have to work hard. It has to be this way, it has to be that way. Well, why can't it be fun? Why can't it be, interviewing people and putting them on symposiums and on shows? This is fun to me, and I never thought, why would I be doing this? Because it's not office work. That was what I was raised up on. But when you look at your hobbies, so just think about this, people. What are your hobbies? And then you'll know what your interests are. And then you may be able to find your authentic self. Whenever that happens, it doesn't matter. You just need to find it. And my next question for you is, you describe yourself as being a forensic when it comes to inner child and shadow work. So, what do you mean by that? And why do so many people stay loyal to the parts of themselves that are holding them back?
So when it comes to like my forensic deep dive, it's really because my psychic gifts allow me to kind of penetrate into the bones of a situation. It didn't always it wasn't always like that. It was years of development and training and practice and really honing in on my gifts and my skills. And what I started to notice was that aside from just being, very empathic and feeling so much of what people are experiencing, I started to be able to kind of zoom in deeper and deeper as to like what is actually the root cause of this. Because maybe somebody is very stubborn, maybe they are very headstrong. And so you have a bunch of people who are headstrong and stubborn, but they're not all stubborn and headstrong for the same exact reasons. So we tend to lump people into categories of different things that they exhibit in their personality, but the core piece of how they got here is very unique. And that's where I can kind of like hone in on an experience that may have happened with a loved one, a childhood experience, something that they may have experienced that scared them, made them believe that they had to take care of themselves and that nobody else was going to support them. And so maybe that's why they're very stubborn and headstrong. But by isolating some of those key pieces, that's where the healing takes place. Because if they can't see why and how they got to be where they are, they're never going to be able to redirect that, because you can't change something with the same thoughts and patterns that created the situation, right?
Yeah, that's the doing the same thing. What's the definition of crazy?
Right.
And hoping for a different outcome. And that's true. It's that part of us, like you had said, not everyone gets to be stubborn in the same way. And most of the time, any type of defense mechanism like that is basically a defense mechanism. So you're doing that to protect yourself. But then you go a little further and say, why do you
Yes.
feel you had to protect yourself? And
Yes.
then, it goes into that, into that. So once people actually get it and the light bulb comes on and they realize that they're not in that child mode anymore, then they can look at it rationally without those emotions that are putting their guard up and go, well, that was then, this is now. So who am I?
Yes. Yes.
That's,
And it happened recently where I was doing a reading for someone and she was feeling like her parents, she's a grown woman, she's in her 50s, and she felt like, my parents, she's struggling to find love, and she feels that her parents did not give her the love that she needed when she was growing up. And there was a lot of issues between both of her parents together, that resulted in divorce. And so she said that, my mother just stopped loving me after that. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. I said, I can tell you exactly what it was. And it just like came to me. I could feel the truth of the situation. And it was not that the mother stopped loving her because the father left. It was because she had this insecurity that her daughter was so vibrant, so joyful, so exuberant, so ready to charge into life as this teenager. And the mother felt the exact opposite of that. The dichotomy, the contrast between these two females, the mother and the daughter facing off. The mother didn't have the skill set to understand how to navigate that situation emotionally and to hold herself in a different way. And so the daughter took it on as, my mother just doesn't love me anymore. And do you know that since we had that conversation, she has seen the situation in a completely different way and has reconnected with her mom. And like, how beautiful is that? You go a whole lifetime thinking that somebody doesn't care about you or doesn't love you because of something that happened. And then you find out it actually wasn't quite that way. Gives you a second
yeah.
chance.
But as kids, that's what we look at it, because the first thing that we say is, what did I do wrong?
Yes.
Well, it's not like we can throw it back on them and go, why are you doing this to me? It's all, what did I do wrong? And then you go through life thinking that. And that affects your relationships, all over, romantic and friends and the whole thing, because then you become a people pleaser because
Yes.
you don't want anyone not to love you or give you that. energy. You want to be a people pleaser. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but after somebody realizes that that's not their role, is to be a people pleaser anymore, doesn't their life become much more or less complicated and more like, I'm relieved.
Yes. I feel like when I actually just had a session recently, exactly about people pleasing. And she realized that she was sacrificing parts of herself for peace, to maintain harmony, to fulfill a dream or an ideology. You know, like we have to have this perfect picture kind of
Mm.
situation. And so she's sacrificing parts of herself to fulfill this beautiful picture, but realized that I'm not happy. This isn't working for me anymore. And so I do believe that we all have a threshold. I believe that we all reach a limitation of what we're capable of giving and giving and giving. Like eventually, either you're going to burn out like a dying star, right? Like you're just going to burn out. You're going to just start cutting people off. Your health is going to take a turn for the worse because your nervous system simply can't handle it anymore. Like your body is giving you cues, and it's time to listen, and it's time to honor those cues, because even though you feel like if you don't support other people constantly, that you don't have value. And that's what I've noticed, is that people feel that if they're not playing some element of a supportive role in everybody else's life, that their value diminishes. And I want to make it really clear that your value is not measured by how much money you make or what you provide for other people, who you are in other people's lives. You have to be your own priority first, and then give of yourself in a very natural and organic way, which comes from authenticity.
Amen to that. Okay. That just in a nutshell. Boom. Um, One last question. You experienced a spiritual awakening at just 15
Mm-hmm.
years old.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Looking back, how did this experience shape the person and the guide that you've become today?
Oh, so 15 years old, I was told that I had to make my confirmation. I was raised Catholic. I said, why? Why do I need to do this? And it was like, because it's what we do. And I said, you know what? That's not good enough for me. And I'm not going to. And it was the first time I really, really, really put my foot down at 15 years old, just saying, like, I'm not doing this and you can't make me. And I challenged the status quo. I challenged my parents. I challenged the church, you know? But what I felt was, even before that had happened, I was being pulled into different practices, different cultures, different civilizations to study, to learn, to understand how their paths also are part of the whole. And that became my heart and soul, was to just learn and absorb and practice and engage in these amazing different practices I had found. But it basically bridged me into my career. And I didn't go from being like a 15-year-old to, starting this business. I started reading cards. I started doing energy healings. I started doing chakra work. I was doing all of that by the time I was 17, 18 years old. And so it was a hobby. I was not like earning money. If I was, it was like $15 for a tarot reading, and I was giving a lot away. I did birth charts that took me 6 hours to do by hand, and I was charging $25 for it, because I loved it, because I wanted to do it so badly. But at that time also, it was like, it's a hobby, it's not a career. You're never going to be able to take care of yourself, take care of a family, create a home, have what people think you have to have in order to live a big lifestyle or to plan for your retirement. And so I decided one day, a switch flipped again. I said, I'm leaving my job. I was a nutritionist. I left my job. I left my benefits. I left everything behind. My husband was very nervous for me. He was like, oh my God, what is she doing? And I said, I'm going all in on me, because I have given this so many years of practice and study and development and dedication, and I don't understand why this isn't where I am earning my income, you know? And so there was the whole, well, that's just not what you do. What
Yeah.
if you can't? That doesn't make any sense. It's out of the mainstream. And so I did it anyway. I did it against everybody's wishes, just like when I didn't make my confirmation, and that just tends to be my way. But if I never took the chance on myself, there are thousands of people that I wouldn't have been able to help and touch their lives in a special way. So I do believe that when you access that authenticity and that inner voice, that inner truth, it's going to propel you to do things that are very much outside of the norm of what other people are expecting from you. And you've got to strengthen yourself to be bold enough to embrace that version of yourself, knowing that you are guided by a force bigger than yourself.
Oh, yes, because you mentioned it's a hobby. I started the same way. I think I was charging maybe $10, but the corporate world, it was like 8 to 5 every single day. And then, trying to get things done on the weekend and doing this, in between. And you find out where your energy is really focused. And that's the thing that people listening, again, look at it. Where is your energy? Where are you most happy? And what is it that you're hearing in your mind, the tapes that say you can't do this, you will fail, you're never going to make a living. So that's, I think, where you come in to help people. You're forensic. I love that term. That means you really dig deep. And sometimes people don't realize it's not that far down. I mean, it's not like you have to be with you for 10 years. It's just because you use the psychic part and you get information that way too. So give it a try. It's not going to hurt you. And before we end, please let people know how they can reach you.
Oh, wow. Okay. So my social media, my name is Renee Masse. You can also, I'm trying to think, there's so many different ways to probably get in touch with me, but I would say like my Facebook is really a popular way to connect with me. You can DM me. My email is thevalkyriemystic@gmail.com. Yeah, and so reneemassey.com, you can also connect with me through there. And I just started a podcast with my good friend Tasha, and it is the Divine Mysticism podcast with Tasha and Renee. And we talk a lot about spirituality. We talk a lot about, because she's Catholic and I'm a mystic. So we have a lot of really interesting conversations about that and how to help people really center into their authentic spiritual self outside of the rigorous structures that other people set up and not us.
Perfect. All right. So ask yourself, have you reached your threshold? Are you tired of the patterns that no longer serve you? And you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're listening to this, you'll know what I'm talking about. If this is for you, contact Renee and have her dig around and see where you learned it, what you really are, and find your true, authentic self. That's the best gift you can give yourself. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next time. Thank you.